Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of Talk a New Week. Talk champion Jonathan Small is in the house. Good morning, Jonathan. How you doing?
Stan, it's good to be back here again, as I mentioned, every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And looking forward to getting the week off to a very pleasant start.
All right. Had a good weekend?
It was okay. I mean, nothing really spectacular. Felt nice to be outside when I was able to be. Nice and cool feel. Tried to watch a little preseason NFL coverage, but I couldn't really get enough time or just knew what was going on. And like I mentioned many times, I'm really not that interested in preseason NFL as the regular season, but I am staying abreast. But the weekend otherwise, I would say, was pretty nice. Feel like you're getting closer to autumn time now. A little autumn feel is in the air.
Yeah.
So anything that you did particular this weekend that stands out? Any nice?
Let's see. Saturday. Had a wedding.
Oh, okay.
Did a video, shot a wedding this Saturday. It's been a long time since I did a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it was nice.
Nice weekend, okay.
Yeah, nice.
That was like a personal favor, or was that part of your business?
No, that was a client, a referral.
Okay.
A referral. I don't know her, but the person who referred her to me was the reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you been busy with clients over the past? I didn't know you did the parade a few weeks ago, the Caribbean.
Did the West Indian parade?
Parade.
Yeah.
So is this a busy time of the year for you?
Actually, now it gets busy now. A lot of people, for whatever reason, September to January. September to January is a busy time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of like this time of the year then to stay busy?
Well, I mean, I have regular clients. So, contractual obligations. But the people who want to do stuff, it'll call you like a week before, 2 weeks before, things like that. Happen right around now. Because people have events that they've been planning, and now they realize they want video or coverage or whatever the case is. And then that's when stuff like that starts happening.
Do you get a lot of personal favor requests? Just people coming to you saying, could you cover this event? Not as a client, but just as a personal favor?
Well, we do cover events. Not as much as we used to. And that's probably because of things like Facebook Live, TikTok, things along that line. But a lot of Facebook Live. A lot of people have the capacity to do this on their own. But these things come in cycles. Some people will do stuff on their own, and then they'll figure out that they want it to be better. They're used to the video. They like the idea of video, but now they want it to look more professional, and they don't want to have to be the ones that do it. And once you start adding graphics and different types of shots, you need to find someone who can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say in another, I don't know, maybe another year or two, those people will start coming into where they no longer want to do this themselves in the wave.
Mm. I mean, it might look like it's a simple process, what you can do on your smartphone with Facebook and TikTok. But if you want a real professional look, professional quality, it's like some things people can do on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you want it to stand out, you can do, probably somebody can paint a house.
Mm-hmm.
But if they want a certain look, they may want to get a professional painter.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good example.
That's a great example.
It's a great example.
Because people figure, well, I can do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
A couple buckets of paint. Then you realize you didn't put the primer down. You didn't get the right kind of paint. It's indoor paint, but it's for an outdoor project. And so you don't know. The problem generally is that you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things that make the difference. You see the final outcome, but you don't know the process that gets you to the final outcome. And professionals, of course, this is what they do. So they have best practices, there's policies, procedures that lead up to that. And they do it in a very timely fashion because, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, people sometimes try to save money. And obviously, if you're going to move, even another example, like a moving job, you may decide, particularly if you're going to move long distance, but if you want to move, it would be cheaper for you to move by yourself, hire somebody as a couple people, and then you just pay them under the table, or you can hire a professional moving company and then pay them the full amount. But it depends on what type of house you have, how much furniture you have, how long a distance you're going. Those are all factors. But it's like everybody's trying to save money and cut corners and pay very little, what you are willing to, I guess, cut corners and just not pay a professional service. But some things you do have to hire a professional service for.
Well, you bring up a good point, there's a reason why they call it cutting corners. But like if you're going to move, my suggestion would be save the money up necessary for the move. Mm-hmm. Because a professional mover there's nothing like it. I'll never forget when we moved Harvard Public Access Television from Sequoia Street to Sargent Street. Mm-hmm. And to this day, it's one of the most amazing things I've seen. The way the professional movers move stuff. It was amazing.
Right.
But they have, if we would have done it, we'd have been carrying boxes up and down the steps. And they had ramps.
They do.
And they pass the box to the next guy and to the next guy, and then it slides on the ramp and is downstairs before you could even think about picking the box up almost. Mm-hmm. And then the way they loaded into the truck and disperse it like that. So there are a lot of benefits to hiring a professional mover or, someone that's going to do your lawn, paint your house. Anytime there's a professional that you can hire to do a job, that is to be preferred. We're going to take a short break. Let me play one of my favorite songs here. This is something that we did a little while back with some young people here in Hartford. And we'll play this because it is the first day of school in Hartford, Connecticut. So stick and stay. Don't go anywhere. And we will be right back.
She just
To be here is our mission, full of purpose. We are driven, we are special, we have pride in who we are, and you can't break our stride. And if you see, like I see, you will realize it's not a dream. This school you make it, lessons you take it, and we work as a team. This school is better with you in it. Yeah, yeah, for every hour, day, and minute. Yeah, yeah, we are here, we are winning. Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. In it, in it. We are loving when you're here. Yeah, man, the future's when you're here. Hope you realize we do, can you believe it? Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. In it, this school is better with you in it. Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. In it.
In our school, such a given for you to learn is our mission. When we ver is what we are as a unit, and you can't bring us down. And if you see, like I see, you'll realize it's not a dream. This school you make it, chances you take it, and we work as a team.
This school is better with you in it. Yeah, yeah, for every hour, day, and minute. Yeah, yeah, when you're here, everyone is winning. Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. In it, in it. We all love it when you're here. Yeah, yeah. Man, the future's when you're here. Hope you realize we do care. Can you believe it? Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. In it, in it.
And just to let you know, before you go, we know your skills won't fail to show. Yeah, we will call you our greatest prize. We know that you'll reach for the skies. Like a star, you'll come right through. I'ma rock with you. Nothing can break us apart because
This school is better with you in it. Yeah, yeah, for every hour, day, and minute. Yeah, yeah, when you're here, everyone is winning. Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. In it, in it, in it. We all love it when you're here. Yeah, yeah, man, the future's once you're here. Hope you realize we do care. Can you believe it? Yeah, yeah, this school is better with you in it. In it, this school is better with you in it. Yeah, this school is better with you in it. Yeah, this school is better with you in it. Yeah, this school is better with you in it.
Hi, my name is Nyesha Garcia. I am from Brazil. I help HPU. I help families de Universidade de Harvard Community. Estou muito feliz em participar. É muito importante engajamento deles padres e madres nas escolas de Hartford com seus ninhos, my children. I love helping family e HPU. Thank you. Gracias. Obrigado.
Yeah, this school is better with you in it. First day of school. If you've got young people in the Hartford public school system and you are not sending your kids to school today, shame on you. Shame, 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 shame. Kids about the house.
Yeah. Nothing like the first day of school, you know.
First day of school.
Yeah, I thought school used to, a long time ago, used to be after Labor Day, but I guess it's been pushed up into August. It's been in August for a while. But then when I was going to school, and I think when you was going to school, it used to always be the day after Labor Day, which I kind of like that day anyway, September. But sometimes the early adjustment, people still traveling on vacation. You know, no excuses, but you know the start date of when school starts. So you're not prepared already. There's some people don't even take the first day of school serious, I think.
It's a big problem. A lot of times you're very right. I remember my wife made a commercial about the first day of school. And it was a good commercial. I had to get the commercial from her so we could play it. And the kids were going to kindergarten. You know, it's like the first day of school for the first, like you going to school for the first time, man. It's the first day.
First day.
And in the storyline was that the mother didn't feel like getting up. It's kindergarten. What's the big deal?
Nah.
Besides, it's raining. You know, it was like one of those kind of things. You know, she stayed home, and it was the mother, the grandmother, and then the daughter. So it's like 3 generations. It was a good commercial.
Okay.
Good commercial indeed. Yeah.
Well, Stan, unfortunately, the guest that was booked this morning is not going to be able to be on the show. It's the third time this has happened to me for different reasons too.
In 10 years, though.
10 years, yes.
Third time.
Well,
in
no,
10 years.
the third time on Morning Talk Live.
Okay.
There might have been a few times. I think it was one other time.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
That's not bad. We do Morning Talk comes on 5. Well, right now, yeah. Well, we're live 3 days a week now, but we were 5 days a week. So that's a lot of shows.
It's a lot of shows.
That's a lot of programs, and so.
Well, this mistake it was not on my part.
Well, they never are.
They never are. You know.
You don't have to worry about it. No one's gonna think Jonathan didn't do a good job.
Okay. Well, it was designed to be a very interesting show. I could possibly rebook the person.
Rebook them.
Rebook them.
Yeah.
Because you always say lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. It's very unlikely.
Right. It's highly unlikely that if they're rebooked that they will miss out. These things have people oversleep. They have car trouble. With Zoom, you can have Zoom problems because Zoom will do an update on you in a heartbeat.
Right.
You get a Zoom update and you jammed up.
Well, that was the problem a few weeks ago. The person's Zoom or the person's camera phone or something wasn't ready, and we couldn't get the proper audio, so it wouldn't make any sense to have that guest on. This was not a Zoom issue, but it was just something that on their part.
I wouldn't worry about it. No.
So that means that gives us a lot of time now. We usually would be talking about issues after.
We
the
usually
Zoom
talk
guest.
for 2 hours after we go off the air.
Right.
No. The program goes from 8 to 10, and then we do like overtime. And last week we were here till 11:15.
11:15. I noticed that.
Right. The guest was gone after the first hour. So
one thing I do like is I was able to move and get up. So I can't sit for 3 straight hours without. I think a couple times we didn't even take a commercial break. We were just here for 3 straight hours.
Right. Technically, we're supposed to do something every half hour.
Every half an hour.
Ideally, every 15 minutes, take a short break.
But I guess when you get into the flow and everything,
you get into the conversation, it's like But you can always say, well, why don't we take a short break? That's all right. Let's do that. Let's take a short break.
That's true. I just tell you that But right now, since I had already answered the phone call and everything, I'm kind of ready. Not. I mean, I would have been ready anyway, but the break would be helpful at some point. And I guess it wouldn't make any sense to talk about what we was going to talk about with the guest. You think?
Well, why wait till the guest comes?
Okay, don't even bring up.
Right. No one would have known that you had a guest. No one would know that the guest didn't come if you hadn't said anything.
Yeah, but I think people do know that we have on Monday.
On Mondays, we generally have guests,
guest.
but they would have figured that this Monday they must not have a guest.
Okay.
That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I try to emphasize bringing a guest, so people who know me enough would know.
And they would know. They would assume that the guest didn't show up. Yeah.
Okay, well, Stan, as I mentioned to you and a few other people yesterday, Steve Harvey, world famous entertainer, radio host, television host, author. Many other different titles beyond that, but those are the titles that stand out. He put some type of segment on YouTube about most people that he know, and I guess most people he think in general usually blows their 20s in some different areas. And then they're trying to they're 10 years behind the time they're 30, and they're trying to do the things then that they should have been doing in the 20s.
Playing catch up. And then all of a sudden they find out that they're 40 and they don't have the things that they should have had in their 30s. So he said now they're still trying, I guess, to duplicate or have what they wanted it, even in their 50s. They're playing catch up.
And he said this would have all been prevented if they would have did the right thing in their 20s.
I agree.
And he used his life, too, as a perfect example. The only thing about the segment that I might find I don't quite understand, he was talking mostly about young people in their 20s, partying, drinking, getting high,
playing video games.
But I was wondering, was he still talking about the people still working, going to school, training, saving their money? I guess that part he didn't really get into directly. He was talking about the other side. So I would assume people probably were having issues, maybe changing jobs, not sticking with a job, not going. He dropped out of college too.
Well, I think I saw the segment you're talking about. The 20s is when a lot of people, they just miss the track. They get off the train. It's sort of like the tortoise and the hare. And so they don't take 20 to 30 seriously. And when they realize it, it's now they're 30 years old.
Right.
That's all.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest obstacles I had, I just didn't know what I wanted. Like I said, this person told me a long time ago, you don't really know what you really want. And it was kind of strange because I was one of my good friends is a electrical contractor, and I was working with him under the table, and people couldn't figure out how come I didn't want to pursue the trade like he was doing. He graduated vocational school. He did the 4-year apprentice, and then he just worked for a particular company. And then I was just working with him under the table. And I think I mentioned this story one time before, when someone came to me and asked me, when you was working with this person on many different construction projects, you didn't see any particular trade that you wanted to pursue. And I said no. So then he told me, you just don't really like construction. It might be a little more to it than just that, but I think that kind of stood out to me when he made that statement. So then this other person telling me, okay, what do you really want to do? What do you really like to do? I'm always telling him what I don't want to do. I don't want to be a package handler. I don't want to do heavy manual labor. But I was never able to really tell the person what I really wanted it to do, what I was willing to sacrifice and pursue. Not do something, half-hearted just to get by, but what you really want to be dedicated towards. So
it's helpful to know what you want to do because then you move toward it.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like people who are against stuff. They're against this, they're against that. They don't want to do this. They don't like that. This is wrong. They're doing this wrong. So they're just against. Well, what are you for? They've never even stopped to think about what they're for.
Right.
They don't give that as much weight or serious thought as they do all the stuff they're against. So you know what you don't want to do.
Right.
Somebody knows I don't want to be a plumber. I don't want to be an electrician. I don't want to work in aviation. Well, what do you want to do? I don't know. So I think if people took a little bit of time to focus on that, it would be much more helpful.
Well, here's the thing, and I do want to ask you, because I think your path looked like it was pretty solid. But before I get into your path, what you did in your 20s, I just still want to clarify something. I was able to reach a point in my early 20s to mid 20s that I thought I wanted to be part of the water and sewer industry. And a referral through somebody was trying to get me into the Metropolitan District Commission. And then they kept throwing back the union. Well, we can't hire you because we hire certain positions for people that's in the union, with the exception of the plant trainee position. And then when I was being told, well, we're getting hundreds of applicants every single week, so the odds of you is just one out of hundreds of other people applying. Mm-hmm. You may not most likely get hired for one most likely position, which would be the entry-level plant trainee position. So the unfortunate thing I think I did is I locked my mindset into just trying to get into the water and sewer agency than looking at something else. Realistically, not some dream opportunity of playing in the NBA and something like that, or, knowing someone that has a business that's just going to hook you up.
Well, people do get laser focused on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like taking a test. Folk have 10 questions on the test. And they spend, you got 10 questions on the test. You got 20 minutes to take the test.
Mm-hmm.
So average 2 minutes per question.
Right.
But question number 3, they'll spend 10 minutes on.
Yeah.
You let it go. Just drop that question, get the rest of them done, because if you keep focusing on this one question, you're not going to have enough time to answer the rest of the questions. You run out of time.
Right.
That's really what's happening in the 20s. People run out of time. They're running out of time. And so, if that's all you're going to focus on is that one job, and that one job only, and that one job, and you keep focusing, you put everything else on hold while you do that.
Right.
And that can be detrimental. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be careful. Unfortunately, a lot of young people don't have the depth of experience to understand what they're doing. And if there's no one around them that has experienced that, it becomes something that they'll be unaware of until it's too late.
Well, that's what I said one time before, that you can find yourself lost and don't even realize that you're lost. It's one thing if you're lost. Okay, I'm driving someplace. I don't know where I'm going, so I know I got to figure out that I got to get a map. I got to ask for directions. But when you was in a scenario like even I was in, where you think you are on the right track, but you're really lost. So I'm somewhat in denial or ignorant. And then a person that's lost and don't even realize that they're lost, now you got to first come to the conclusion that you're lost.
That's so true. I mean, a lot of people don't know they're lost. That's part of, excuse me, that's part of the definition of being lost.
Right.
You're not on the correct path. Until you see something that lets you know that, you have no idea that you're not on the correct path. It's like if you were flying in an airplane, or if you were at sea and your navigational devices were off, you would think you were on the right course. There's no reason for you to think that you're not. So you trust what you know,
right?
And you're on course until you aren't, in your mind, right? Only in your mind. You've been off course, but in your mind, you're on course. Then when you see something that shouldn't be, now you're aware. So you see an island, you're like, wait a minute, there shouldn't be any islands out here. What's going on?
Yeah.
And you do some other checking, and you have other frames of reference. And you say, oh my God, we're way off course. And now you got to get back on course. This can happen in careers. It can happen in relationships. It can happen in anything.
Anything, right.
So, when people set goals, they have metrics along the way that you can see, am I on course? Because if the goal is, let's say, by the time you're 25, you want to be at a particular place. If there aren't markers along the way that you can check and see, all right, well, if I want to be here at 25, that means I need to be here at 23, which means I need to be here at 22. So when 22 comes around, if you haven't gotten to that benchmark, then you could say, all right, why am I not where I should be? Do I need to study more? Do I need to invest more time in training, or whatever the case is? So it's like an athlete. Athletes know whether or not how much, if your target is to lift 200 pounds, and you only lift 100 pounds, you know how much kind of work you have to do. People that don't have frames of reference, there's no way for them to know that they're off course or missing the mark until that time comes that they should be there. And that becomes their first reference point. And, sometimes people luck out and they are on course, not because they knew what they were doing. They just got fortunate.
Well, two things, I'm glad you mentioned athletes, because somebody, and I wasn't really thinking that I was going to make it in professional basketball, but we were just talking about sports and basketball in particular. And then, I was about 23, maybe 20, going on 24. And he told me, and this was way back in the days, that, if you're not in the if you're not established professional basketball player by 25, 26, the odds of you making it is just very slim to none.
Almost zero.
Almost zero. So it's really a young person's game. That's not the case, though, in, let's say, different occupations, though. You can make it in other fields of work older, but it still becomes more of a challenge.
It becomes a serious challenge when you're older, because you are competing with younger people. And there are a whole lot of reasons why that is. But,
Well, like I said, again, sports, you can pretty much forget about it. If you're not established in a professional, if you're trying to become a professional basketball, football, baseball player, and you haven't established yourself in that, I guess, hired or signed a contract by 25, you're just not going to make it. I mean, it used to be a time you had the Continental Basketball Association, and you may still have some forms like that where you can be a journeyman and you can possibly make it to the NBA after 30. But that was quite a while ago, and that's really non-existent even now, because high school ball players are only going to college, really the top players, for 1 year, and then they're going straight to the NBA. So they're only going to college, the top, elite players, because you have to go at least 1 year. And their whole goal is to get a contract signed with the NBA. So they at a whole different level that they already know if they're good enough, chances are they're going to make it. Now, you still should have something to fall back on. Your situation, though, I think you had the perfect blueprint. You graduated technical aviation school?
Oh, well, I mean, I went to school for aviation maintenance.
Maintenance, right?
Aviation maintenance technology, the Upper Buck School of Aviation Maintenance Technology in Pennsylvania. Quakertown, Pennsylvania.
Right. But I mean, you got into industry in your 20s. You worked there, and then you made a simple transition or a transition.
Well, I went out of. I went from high. I took 2 years. I went to Votech.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to technical school, and in the technical school program, one of the programs was aviation maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So you went for 2 years. So the 11th and 12th grade, I went to the same school, and then post graduation, I took the course, the FAA approved course. But I had 2 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Then after I graduated from there, I went right from there to Pratt Whitney.
Right.
I worked at Pratt Whitney till I left Pratt and then went to the TV station.
Well, see, again, I don't think you fall into the category that Steve Harvey was talking about. I think I fall more into that category because if you went and you knew what you wanted to do, now you might have then put your money to the best use. There might be some questions.
Well, I mean, yeah, I did my I spent my money very recklessly in my 20s. You know, I was at Pratt and Whitney, and this is 1979. I got hired at Pratt Whitney in 1979. I was making $10 an hour. In 1979, I was living downtown in the Richardson,
right
next to Sage Allen. In between Sage Allen and G Fox is the Richardson Mall, and they had apartments in there. My apartment was $425 a month.
All right.
And then I moved, and then I moved back, and the apartment I had then was $525 a month. So the most I paid rent was $525 a month. It was a very nice apartment, big, and you know that. But I made $25,000 a year. Which is not a lot of money now.
But back then it was.
Back then it was. Well, it was. So, and I was at Pratt Whitney for 8.5 years. So in that time, I had made gross, but you know, 200 rounded off at $200,000. I had zero money in my savings account and checking account when I left Pratt & Whitney.
So maybe in some areas you do fall into that category.
I think lots of people do, but you know, because you're not planning for the future. Not everybody does, but lots of people do. If you have, there's this famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've never read the book, but I've heard a lot about it. But the book charts how you think of money, how you value money. What is money, and what is it used for? And most people don't think of money the way they should, and so they don't save.
Yeah,
you know, you should save.
Well, see, that gets into another issue because now as you get older, you have to save
right. You're playing catch up.
You're playing catch up.
If you don't get a good start, you will play catch up in your job, in your relationship,
right.
in life. So, getting a good start is always essential. Now, in my never to be humble opinion, because you didn't get a good start doesn't mean you can't still run the race. And Steve Harvey talked about that.
He did.
Every day is a day that you can start the race. Right. So your success is relative to when you actually start to get serious about the race. Your success is never going to be as good as those who had a head start. If someone has a 400-year head start on you, they got a 400-year head start. Stop moaning.
But-
I was almost said another word.
Yeah.
To perceive moaning. And run. Get in the race and run. Now, you have a marked advantage of people behind you. You know, you live in the now. You don't live 400 years ago. You don't live 10 years ago. You don't live 5 years ago. You can't keep looking back at what you didn't do, because all the time you're spending looking back is time you're not spending moving forward.
Right.
And that's a trap people get into.
Well, Steve Harvey really didn't fall into that trap. I mean, he had a real interesting life story. He didn't get actually, I guess, hired or his own television show until he said he was 39. He was doing stand-up comedy. He was struggling. Mm-hmm. He was homeless for 3 years, as I mentioned one time before. It was very degrading. He mentioned some things on other segments that I didn't even show you about what it was like being homeless for 3 years, sleeping out of his car.
Well, that's his origin story, and it's unique to Steve Harvey. Only he could live that story. There have been other people who have been homeless, sleeping out their cars, but they weren't Steve Harvey, and their story is different than his.
Right.
So it's. I think the takeaway from people like Steve Harvey is that you can be successful no matter how bad things are, and that's the story. More than it is, he was homeless, he had divorces, this, that, and the third. You know, all of that is to set the stage for I overcame the obstacles. And I think sometimes people get caught up in what beset folk more than the fact that they overcame obstacles. Because everyone has obstacles. Everybody. Mm-hmm. And when you make a determined mind to overcome them, you do.
Well, truthfully, Steve Harvey, he mentioned the fact that he overcame it, and many people who don't know what he's been through, he think that's still relevant, because you may see Steve Harvey today and thinking his life was always moving in this so-called direction. So his importance, I was explaining to people, is he can kind of relate to what he was talking about for people in their 20s.
Right.
And getting off to a bad start or making drastic mistakes and then playing catch up, because that's what it really still comes down to, that you're playing catch up.
Right, but you can't get lost in the sauce of the fact that you're playing catch up. Mm-hmm. Because I've had more than a few conversations with more than a few people having the same conversation we're having now.
Right.
And many of them aren't any further because they keep having the conversation. Mm-hmm. The conversation is only to establish where you are, your frames of reference. Mm-hmm. Then you move. Steve Harvey is not settled in what he did. He's sharing a life experience with people so that they can understand his level of success is what it is. And then you move on. Even when he's talking, even in the segment, he's on set or something. He's on set. He's on set. I don't know whether he's getting ready to perform, whatever the case is. It was like an assistant, a page, or somebody had come to get him. And they didn't interrupt him. The young lady, she didn't interrupt him, but she moved into his sight line so that he could see that we have to wrap this up or go. So it was either his assistant, something. But he is smoking his cigar. He got a watch on, rings. He's sitting in a tent that has air conditioners. Mm-hmm. So the tent is cool.
Right.
It's clearly hot outside. Mm-hmm. He wasn't going to break no sweat.
Yeah.
Extremely well dressed. Pair of $2,000 suede shoes.
I thought you were gonna say suits, but his shoes was $2,000.
Right.
Okay.
And the suit, you know, you have a pair of $2,000 shoes on. You know how the suit or everything else is ready, tight, and he's projecting on purpose an image of success and telling you that you can be successful, or you can get caught up in the narrative of those who quite frankly are not. And let that be your goal. To not be better than anyone else around you because you don't want to feel like you're, better than. People have all kinds of excess baggage they're carrying around in their head and reasons why they don't move beyond where they are. Unless you are extremely content and settled in who you are and comfortable in who you are and why you're where you are, then the opportunities to be successful and move forward and excel are ever present. That doesn't mean you have to be there, but people shouldn't not be there because of some of the things that are happening. It's not that they're necessarily comfortable where they are. It's that they either lack the motivation or don't know what to do next.
Right.
And sometimes it is they get caught up where they are. Their situation turns to quicksand, and all they can do is just keep their midsection from going under the sand.
Yes.
They don't move, just stay steady. But you can't get out. The more you move, the more you go down. So it's just like that's where they're stuck. They're stuck, quote unquote, stuck in the mud.
Yeah. And if your mind is stuck, even with
you're
your body,
in trouble.
you're really in trouble. And that's what could easily happen. You can find your mindset stuck as well as your body. But one thing about moving forward, I made a suggestion to you earlier this week. I thought the Water and Sewage Agency, particularly here with the Metropolitan District Commission, since I just mentioned that I had an interest a long time ago in pursuing that as a field of career. And I remember when they had the Clean Water Project, when it first got started, you really didn't even buy into that as a major economic development project. And the late Reverend Ritter felt that that was the greatest one of the greatest, economic opportunities in the greater Hartford area. But you really didn't see it as an economic development project.
Not in the way that he did, but that was over 20 years ago.
Right. But it's still, I think it might be finalized. I think it's still some ongoing areas. So what I would really like to do, because we've had William DeBello on Morning Talk Live with Jay Stan McCauley Talk Show, your show.
Mm-hmm.
He's been on All About You and Face to Face to go along with President CEO of Metropolitan District, Scott Jellison. I would like to actually, because you was part of this in some areas, showing what really takes place at the whole operation of Metropolitan District Commission. Because what it gets into is it's not just the job piece or the employment piece of MDC, which is valuable, but it provides a service that's always going to be needed. Water and sewage is always going to be needed in your society.
Well, so is aviation and electricity.
Well,
you need electricity.
Yeah, but how you get electricity could change. You have solar, and that might change.
People will have solar, but you're always going to need delivery of major electrical power. And the more you have electric cars, the more demand that's going to be. So I'm simply suggesting that water and sewage is not the only thing that's always going to be around. But if you're hyper focused on water and sewage, that's the only job and the only thing that can happen somehow, some way, somewhere. There's the police officers.
Yeah.
All kinds of jobs.
Well, I'm glad you said electricity and gas, because that falls into the infrastructure development. I always wanted to do a show just talking about those three particular components: water, sewage, electricity, and gas. Because sometimes we get focused with the building trades, and that's part of infrastructure development too. But the water and sewage, the electricity, and the gas industries, I don't know if they get the same emphasis that the building and trades get.
Shut my mic off for my sneeze, my mute button. I think building and trades get emphasis because people, you know people who are in them, and therefore they talk about them. All of these things get talked about in certain circles. We're just not in those circles.
Right, right.
And so, the idea, the notion that if you're not, well, let me rephrase that. Obviously, if you're exposed to a thing, you can know about a thing. Mm-hmm. There are more jobs than people have time to even begin to know.
There's.
There's nothing that prohibits somebody from going to the library or now doing a Google search on types of jobs. They're the ones that gotta want to know what the job opportunities are, from stylists to doctors to the types of doctors to engineering to food service to all of the things that go on in food service industry, whether it's working on a farm to prepare cattle for slaughter, or there's the delivery of the meat. I mean, there's no end to the jobs. We don't talk about agriculture.
Right, we don't.
We live in a state that is a very agricultural state, the tobacco industry. We don't talk about agriculture. You drive to the airport, you drive down to New Haven, there's farms everywhere, corn growing. So the agricultural issue in high schools outside of Hartford, they have 4-H clubs, where you learn about farming. So, I mean, there are a lot of things we don't talk about. Talking about them means nothing. Are you willing to explore those opportunities? And it's my never to be humble opinion that when people want to know about a thing, they find out about it.
Well, it's not even just knowing about something. I'm talking about being able to get your foot in the door, getting in. And I'm glad you mentioned these other areas of industries in society, because you're right. There's enough jobs and businesses from A through Z that you could almost be selective. If you don't want this, you don't like this, then you go to the next one.
For now,
right. Jobs are going to change. There's some job industries that are going to become obsolete as being predicted. But as far as right now, there's certainly enough job occupations.
There's now. They're dropping a lot of money putting this information out. We're not getting any of it, but that's not the point. I only mention that because this is not a paid endorsement or commercial. Mm-hmm. There is a company in Connecticut that is doing some serious hiring. Mm-hmm. Do you know who it is?
I don't. Is it Pratt & Whitney?
No.
Okay.
General Dynamics. Now, there are more jobs at General Dynamics than people can begin to think or imagine. They build submarines down in Groton, in New London area. So, they're looking to hire 4,000 people in the next 3 years.
You don't even see that there should even be a need for talking about jobs, because there's so many jobs out there that you got to almost be deaf, dumb, and blind not to run into an opportunity.
It's not that I don't see a need of talking about jobs. It's the premise or the idea that if you're not talking about them, people won't know about them. People know about all kinds of stuff. People know that they're looking for folk to work. So what do you want to do, and what are you doing to find the jobs?
Right.
What are people doing to go and find the jobs? I think we've come to this. We live in a microwave age, drive-up window age, and now drop it off at the house age, and people have come into this place where, well, if someone doesn't bring it to me or tell me about it, then I shouldn't be able to be held responsible for not knowing it. That just is not that's not how the world runs. And people, by the time they realize it, they're 30 years old.
Well, no, see, I think a situation a little different. I think if you know about a job or industry and you're trying to get into that particular industry and you're having a difficult time, then now you got to work on another strategy. Okay, you know about the companies, you know they're hiring.
Right. I think you need to look at different things. Mm-hmm. Not keep trying to get into some place that you can't.
Right. That's
you
true.
know, and I think I'm having a hard time getting my foot in the door. You know, everyone is not going to be Oprah.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people, lots of people in my line of work who believe they're going to be the next Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people come into my office and tell me how they were going to be the next Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't going to be the next Oprah. Only one Oprah. Gail couldn't be the next Oprah.
Right. but well, Gail has still done very well.
But she's done very well. But where she is now is where she kind of like started out in like kind of like news. But she wanted to be like Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
And with Oprah being her best friend and 2 shots at the prize, she still didn't get there.
Right.
So it's very, very difficult to become someone else. That person is already established. Mm-hmm. So, and it took them a long time to get there. Oprah wanted to be a talk show host. She sat out her story. People know about her story. Sat outside the studio. She wouldn't go away. She kept doing this, that, third, trying to get her foot in the door. She finally got her foot in the door. You can get your foot in the door. You can make a way. But those are very, very extraordinary individuals in an extraordinary moment in time. That is not the norm. It is not the status. It's not the way things are done. It's how she did it. And a lot of times people look at that and they say, well, you know, I could do that. Mm-hmm. How much time are you going to spend trying to get your foot in the door? For many people, it's a lifetime endeavor. Others, it's a 10-year endeavor.
Yeah.
Others, it's a 30-minute endeavor. Some give up too soon.
Right.
And so people just have to have some goals so that if you have a goal, you know where you want to be. And if that's where you want to be, then you have success, ways to mark your journey there. If you can't get there, it's time to have another, reset the goal to something else. Because the time that people are wasting trying to get something that they're not going to attain, and I won't be a dream killer, but they're not going to attain that. The sooner people understand that, the easier it is for them to move on.
Well, that's kind of what you felt about the Clean Water Project. You felt that, you know, we'd be here 10 years afterwards, still protesting in front of MDC building headquarters. I mean, you were supportive in people's efforts towards trying to aim for something, but beyond that, you didn't feel it was really even necessary to constantly be trying to get, I guess, contracts through the Clean Water Project. I'm just using this as one example. There's other examples you can mention or I can mention too.
Was I wrong?
No, you wasn't, because I don't think the minorities really got a good fair share of the contracts.
There you go. You could try. There's nothing wrong with trying.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to be a pragmatist, which I am, I'm practical.
Right.
Yeah, I believe in dreams. I believe in setting lofty goals and attainable goals. There's nothing wrong with that. But so what is it you're trying to do? Mm-hmm. You trying to make a point? You trying to make a statement? That's cool. Make a statement. Nothing wrong with making a statement. Mm-hmm. That's cool. People make statements all the time and get nothing in return, but they made the statement. That was the cost of the statement. Now, if you're trying to actually do something, then you need to understand when it's going to happen and when it's not. And if it's not going to manifest, then you do something else.
Right.
Okay, so if you had kids in a school that was failing, and you got involved in the school PTO, and you're going to try and make some changes at the school, and that's all real cool, and you realize you're up against this behemoth of a system, I'm taking my kids out.
Yes.
I only need to hear 2 or 3 things when I go into a school related to my kids, and they are out. I'll go up there not right now because they don't start school till Wednesday. But I had no problem walking up in there right now, get my kids and bring them down here right now.
Yeah, but see, then that's your whole frame of character. You don't waste your time, whether your children in school or many other things, involved with something that is not going to get what you're looking for. If I know you enough that I know you, I think that's your whole mentality. You don't stay in an apartment that you're dissatisfied with. You don't participate and stay in organizations that you don't see nothing coming out of it. So I think your whole frame of character is different. I don't want to say it's unique, because there's probably many people who think like you too. That you
got a family member that thinks exactly like
exactly. Y'all almost 100% alike. You know,
I'm not unique. There's a whole lot of people who process stuff like this. The sooner you get to that place, the better. That's what Steve Harvey's trying to lay out. Mm-hmm. If you could get there at 20, you're gonna be a blessed individual, because eventually you get there, because that's the way things run on the planet. They don't run the way you want them to run, or think they should run. They run the way they run.
Right.
And the sooner people get a grip of that, the more they'll be successful in their endeavors.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not a professional job expert. I'm not an industry analyst. I'm only going by projections. And we've brought this up before, that there is a worker shortage. There's many industries and occupations that's in dire need. And again, I'm not someone that goes out there and tries to rally or advocate people in this particular field of industries. Okay, we need to get people looking at the building trades industries, looking at other industries as career options. It's just a suggestion or an idea. And whether you feel people should know about certain things, I would still say you will be surprised of the things that many people don't know about.
There's lots of things. There's lots of things I don't know about.
Don't know about. Exactly. I mean, some things, if you're not in that circle, you're not connected with people, you're just not going to know.
Right. And don't get me wrong, Jonathan. I don't think there's anything wrong with making people aware of job opportunities, and making people aware that there are areas and lines of work that people can get into. There's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a difference between, if we're talking about young people or older people. If someone needs a job, then it's incumbent upon them to look for the job. That's separate from what kind of jobs are out there. And making people aware of those types of jobs. I remember some years back when I was doing some stuff with Blue Hills Civic Association and workforce development, and all kinds of people came in and to expose the young people to all the different things that could be done, from a brain surgeon to fashion designer to, there was all kinds of people who came and presented what they did. The kids interviewed them about the jobs they did as a way to understand the types of jobs that are available. They were all in between the 10th and 12th grade. And so they're trying to make up their minds as to what it is they want to be, how much work goes into it. How did you get started in your business? How you become a brain surgeon. Literally, there was a brain surgeon there. And so making people, the MDC, William DeBello, whatever the case is, if someone's going to come and talk about what kind of jobs the company has, that's cool. But the company has work. And there are people who are going to fill that work. If you get into a place like General Dynamics is in, they have so much work that they can't find people. They had a float in the Puerto Rican Day Parade. They have television commercials that they're running, looking for work. They're training people. You could come there and they'll train you. That's when you know that they really have a need.
Right.
Is they have come here and we'll train you. They just need human beings. Otherwise, they're going to lose the industry. You just can't make making submarines is a serious business. It's one of the most technologically advanced vehicles on the planet. And so there are skills that go into this kind of work. There's skills that go into working in the water system. There's institutional knowledge. So depending upon how these companies are run and who's running them, if they have half a brain and a little bit of vision, they know that they need to be prepared for when their workforce retires, that all of that institutional wisdom doesn't walk out with them. And so you're going to have to train people, and it takes time to train people on how to get to a certain place. So you got to get this stuff ramped up. They're looking for these people. And if they're looking for 4,000 people, then that means that they're going to have like 8 to 12,000 come on board, because people are going to leave after 2 years. They're not going to like the job. They're going to quit. That won't be the right kind of person. It's a huge, huge problem and a huge undertaking. So, yeah, there are all kinds of jobs. But I think along with making people aware of jobs, they need to understand that it is incumbent upon them to seek out jobs. First, seek out the kind of jobs in areas that you want to work.
Right. Then
understand that you have to have a job, whether it's something you want to do or not, because you need income. And so I think there's
Well, see, that last area might be the one area that you and the family member up in Boston might not be on the same page 100%, because I think he would tell his son, you need a job, but at the same time, he would be opening up different opportunities to his son. He wouldn't just tell his son, maybe like what you told your son, I don't care what type of job you do, you're going to have a job in order for you to stay in this household, not me be on your back. Where I think the family member up in Boston would provide so much different ways for his son.
Well, how old is his son?
Actually, I think his son is in the early 20s. Might be about 23, 22, 23.
All right, this is my son's age.
Close to that same age.
Yeah.
But
so
y'all might have a difference in how y'all would advocate if the son is out of work. Y'all have the same ultimate goal. It's just that how you would just stress it would be a little bit differently than how he would stress it. He would tell his son, there's different ways that you can make money. He doesn't even buy into the 9-to-5 job structure. I mean, he knows it's important. He knows it's needed, but he believes in exposing his son, and he believes in letting other people know that there's different ways beyond the 9-to-5 job traditional structure that exists, that we should even be, that he recommends should be emphasized much more than the traditional go work for somebody else. So y'all on the same page, Stan, in many different areas, but there might be a few areas where y'all...
I'm sure we're not exactly alike.
But
and if we were to get together and actually have a conversation, there'd be all kinds of things in which we are not alike and different. No, I understand there's all kinds of jobs, but all of my kids, you can ask my youngest kids, they'll tell you the same thing. You are responsible for your direction.
Right.
I am responsible to make sure that you're safe, fed, and have access to as many opportunities as possible. But at some age, you become an adult.
Right. I understand.
And at that age, I'm not going to micromanage your life because I'm doing you more harm than I am good. You are going to live the rest of your life doing you. And so my daughter, my oldest daughter, has a degree from college in an area she doesn't even think about work. She doesn't want to do that. And when I was kind of saying, well, you could always do X, Y, and Z, she said, Dad, you always said that you should have a job, that if you quit, if you were fired on Friday, you would go back and volunteer on Monday. I don't like doing that work. She can make real good money doing it. She doesn't like doing it. So, and I says, well, that's true. That's true. I always did say that. And, okay, yes. But she's grown. She's grown. And she does have a job. But no adult is going to stay in the house where I am,
Right.
and not have a job, and then come downstairs and eat stuff out the refrigerator. So the emphasis isn't on, I think you should have this kind of job or that kind of job. There's plenty of things I think that he should be doing, but at the end of the day, I can't make him do that. But I can impress upon him the idea, the notion that if he's not working, he's gonna stay here.
Well, I mean, I don't know 100% about the family member up in Boston. If he would direct his son the same way, maybe next time I talk to him, I will ask him that. But I still think the approach is, you're not gonna guide your son.
Not at 22.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna guide a 22-year-old, not a 15 or 16-year-old.
Mm.
So when we talk about guiding your son, in my mind, we're talking about children, not progeny. Yeah, he is my son. He'll be my son when he's 100 years old. We're talking about ages.
Well, maybe I need to know the full definition when I say guide. Mr. Knight would show his son. He would analyze his skill set, what he's good at, and he would focus it on that and tell him, because he's actually done this with one of his sons.
Right, we've done that with Jalon.
So you've done that, okay? So maybe
absolutely. I mean, but that's like standard parenting.
But you don't have this belief. At least I don't think you have this belief, because I mentioned this before, and I gotta be careful I don't keep going back into this same statement, that a lot of people don't know what's out there, but you don't still see that as the problem.
Jonathan, that is not what hinders people from getting jobs. That's where we get caught up in the mud.
Well, not jobs, reaching. I would say more of reaching your full potential. Anybody can get a job.
Here's someone. If a person wants a job, they will pursue it. There are folks who just don't want to work at all. As mind-blowing as that is to me, it is the reality of today as of former decades. Some people don't want to do anything.
I understand that, Stan. I'm not naive to that.
Right. So if you're only exposed to making hamburgers, hot dogs, and French fries, and you've been exposed to bricklaying, you've been exposed to roofing, and you've been exposed to lawn care. There's 4 things that you've been exposed to.
Right.
In your little world, that's all the jobs there are. So what prohibits you from getting a job cutting the lawn? Nothing. That's all you know.
Right.
So you got to choose to do something. What's limiting you from making hamburgers, hot dogs, and French fries? Nothing. So you can go get that job. Now, while you're on that job, you find out, oh my goodness, there's an opening in the development of transparent aluminum department at Yale. Oh, I'm going to go get that job because that's what I've always wanted to do. I have dreams at night. I wrote the formula for transparent aluminum on my wall at home and made some. I didn't know you could get paid for that. So now they'll go further. But those things are driven by the individual. You don't have enough time in the 20s. From 20 to 30, you will run out of time exposing people to all of the different jobs there are. So that cannot be part of why somebody doesn't have a job.
Well, let me clarify something, because I think what I really want to emphasize is it's probably not so much the job that you need to be exposed to. It's possibly the world view beyond what you think you see. A job is only one aspect of your life. There's other areas.
These sound more like the what's wrong and what can't be done, as opposed to.
Well, it's part of the solution, I think. It's part of, we have a problem. We want to identify what the problem consists of. A person doesn't want to be, because you always say, well, you're grown, but that doesn't mean you're responsible. Because you're 18 or 21. Okay, legally, you are an adult. Does that mean that you are a productive, responsible person because you are an adult?
I don't know. That's a question we need to ask our armed forces when they draft 18-year-olds and put them on a battlefield with a gun.
But they're screening out people. You don't get but I guess I would assume before you get into the military, there's a process. You're not going to just take anybody and throw them into the military.
I moved here when I was 19 years old. I had just turned 19. I was 18. I turned 19 in January. I moved to Hartford when in July of 1979. I left the house with $100. By the time I reached Hartford, I had $50 left. And I had to wait till my first paycheck from Pratt Whitney.
All right.
I had everything on in the house because I was reckless and irresponsible. I bought 100 Reese cups just to put in a drawer so that when folk came over to the house, I could open up and say, "Want a Reese cup?" Because I thought that was cute. I was living in the Richardson, had one wall was all brick. The Richardson had heat exchange. The heat pump. They had this thing that created air, and so it was air conditioning and it was also heat. So the heat pump is how it stayed warm. I mentioned that because I had a brick wall. The brick wall got cold because it was the wall to the outside. So I'm heating the brick wall to keep my apartment warm. I left my lights on so that when I came home, the ambiance of the apartment was ready for me when I walked through the door. My first electric bill was beyond understanding. I learned I need to turn off the 3 TVs I had in my 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
One in the kitchen, one in the bedroom, one downstairs. Like I said, I was spending money like it was water. I buying all kinds of furniture. I go down to the workbench in the Civic Center shops. I was just buying all kinds of stuff. It was just ridiculous, reckless and irresponsible. Now, at some point, you got to get it together. I had to get it together. Buying clothes, 40 pairs of shoes. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. That's irresponsible. That is reckless. That's the 20s. I was late for work one time because I was playing Pac-Man.
Yeah, I didn't know you played Pac-Man.
All kinds of stuff, and video games were just coming out at that time, and I was missing work on a regular basis where my boss told me you're developing a pattern of behavior that shows that you don't have respect for being at work on time, and particularly on Fridays.
Yeah.
Because I would go out to the club.
Oh, okay.
Down to the Staircase Lounge. I had Jerry Curl.
Yeah.
You could tell me nothing.
Right.
Could dance like nobody's business. Down at Real Art Ways, over at the Staircase. Curtis Robinson's club, and and at some point you have to grow. You have to become the responsible adult. That is something that's part of the maturing process. A lot of times kids get there during college.
Right.
They may not have the luxury of going to college, so they're going to have to get there through the regular goings and comings of life. That's part of growing up, Jonathan. And the more people put that off, the longer it is that they're going to actually have to go through that. It's like the person who's never lived in an apartment at 35 years old. And women who get married at a young age and get divorced, that's when they find out.
Yeah.
Because now they have to manage all of that on their own. They just have never done it. It isn't it's not a smart issue. It's an experience issue. So if you don't experience these things, the day you start is when it happens. My son has never lived on his own. He's never owned an apartment. He doesn't know what it is to go to work, because if you don't, you won't be able to make your rent. You won't be able to pay your electricity. They will cut your electricity off. They will stop your water from running. All these things are part of becoming a mature, responsible human being. And everyone has to learn those things on their own. Some people learn them the hard way. They grew up in a place and in a society where if at 12 years old you wasn't operating like you had a brain, you wind up dead. So you have a lot of young people in foreign countries who act more mature and are more responsible, feed their family, their brothers and sisters, take care of their mom at 12.
Yeah, well, Cliff Thornton told me actually the same thing when he was 11 or 12 years old. He was paying all of the bills in his house. That's not a normal, traditional way of a household should be operating. I don't know all the details beyond what he just told me, but
life teaches you. Life takes over. At some point, there are a set of we have a set of norms, societal norms, but life is the real teacher. And most people are protected from the real world until they get there. And that's kind of what Steve Harvey is talking about. Don't get there sooner than later. Because once you get there, that's when the race begins. And now you're 10 years behind. You're 20 years behind. You're 30 years behind. Nothing changes the rules of the game. Mm-hmm. Once you get in the game, now life's got you. Now you got to play by the rules. It doesn't matter where you are on the planet. The rules are the same. They're the same.
Well, I hear different ways. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with anything that you just said. Keep in mind, America has a safety net, and there's ways that some people, you could say, become responsible, maybe through no merit on their own. If you are able to get Section 8 housing, you have your own apartment, but how are you getting your apartment? Are you really working to pay rent, or is the government mostly subsidizing 80% of your rent?
Yeah. We know the answer to that question.
So you can say that person is living on their own. They are a responsible adult. Now, what happens if Section 8 is removed or they screw up?
They fail.
They fail.
Miserably.
So there's two sides of every story. In this case, there is two sides. And it's the old saying, when you work for something, you appreciate it a lot more than when it's giving to you. Now, you may feel you work to have your number or your name on the list, that it goes from 300 to 400 up to 1 or 10 to be eligible for subsidized housing. You can't. People say the Great Society programs that Lyndon Johnson expanded in 1965 created a huge problem. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody falls into that category, because you will emphasize this time to time. But it did create a huge problem when people believe that the government is available to help you function. It's not as bad probably as it used to be, the numbers, when Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, established welfare reform. Governor John Rowland in Connecticut had the 21-month, elimination of welfare. You did see a reduction of people starting to say, wait a minute, I remember talking to people saying, what am I going to do now? He's going to cut me off of our welfare, so I got to go find a job.
Oh, imagine that.
But I'm saying, so something made the people see that they didn't need to really work. Because
if you're incentivized to not work, then you won't work. Why should any human being put out labor that is unnecessary?
Well, that's not true, Stan, because some people said they would never go on welfare, regardless of whether it's available or incentivized or not. I'm not going to be a product of the welfare system. I rather work. When I was born, they wanted my mother to go on welfare. She said no. She wanted to work.
Right.
Because that was kind of the norm. It was so easy to get on welfare, and people was just taking advantage of it.
Right. Well, I'm not saying everybody. When I say, people are incentivized, if there's a whole lot of folk who didn't think they would ever need anything, then the pandemic came. Just like that. Most people living from paycheck to paycheck. Mm-hmm. There's lines over a Rentschler Field. CRT stopped giving food to the poor and gave it to the middle class.
Yes.
All right. Now we got food banks feeding folk who was working at Pratt and Whitney, and now these folk are sitting out. Not that Pratt and Whitney ever really shut down. A lot of manufacturing places stayed open. But there was a lot of people out of work.
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas was horrible.
Yes.
Okay, and all across the country, the same thing. Now, folk are going out. The trunks are open. They're putting little food products in there, making sure you had enough to eat for you and your family. They made sure that the house didn't get repossessed or foreclosed on, so they forbid the banks to do stuff. Folk got so comfortable not paying rent that they just, what money they had, they spent it on creature comfort things. Some people chose to pay their rent through this time, even though they didn't have to,
right?
Because they are responsible. They understand that if I don't pay the rent now, I'm going to have to pay it later. Right. I'm not going to get behind on my rent. Those are responsible people. A lot of people, because of the situation, that's why we have a safety net. And so sometimes people will take the safety net because that's what it's there for. If they don't do that, they will starve. Now, other folk didn't want to go back to work. Some folk could have gone to work, but the incentive to stay home with the little stipend they were given, it was like a little welfare program. It took people about 4 weeks to get real used to that. Now imagine having a whole generation grow up on welfare. Their kids growing up on welfare. Now it becomes the mindset. So there's reasons, and we understand those things, as to why people were trapped in this dependency. The worst thing in the world to be is dependent on someone else for anything. Self-sufficiency is to be preferred over having to wait for someone to bring you your food, your medicine, pay your bills. That is not freedom. It's not independence. It's slavery. You are enslaved to a person, and the people who are doing this are making money off of you. You've become the cotton for them.
Well, the thing, welfare and the social service agencies do provide a need. And I think it's how you go about. It's one thing to abuse a system. It's another thing to work with a system. If you don't make enough money that you're able to sustain, food, there's nothing wrong, offsetting it. It's one thing to say that there's no stipulations that you have to go by and you're still eligible for something. If you are making a certain amount of money now, you're back in the workforce, you don't need to be on welfare. Does that mean the cost of housing or the cost of living is still going to be affordable, that you can maintain it, and then the government should kick in?
No.
Okay, so that part I can understand, that part.
Right.
You may have to make more money or get another job or whatever the case may be.
Or lower your expenses.
But when you grow up, as you just stated, and people know the system, they know if they sign up, you can get almost everything now from the government.
That's abusing the system.
Abusing the system. So
that's no longer a need. When people need a thing, the thing is there. When you don't need it, you should leave it off. Now, people that don't need it anymore like it, so they're going to stay on it. Who's going to? The President of the United States, under the authority of the emergency pandemic, this, that, and the third, feels he has the authority to wipe out $10,000 loans for people who took out college loans, right? Up to $10,000. Now, a lot of the people who have these loans that have been paying them on time don't need to have the government pay for them. But they're not going to say no.
Turning down something that's free is hard to do.
$10,000 is that threshold. 15 is the threshold. $10,000, they're going to wipe out 10. I'll take it. And that's where that's how people are processing it. Well, I'll take it. It works for me. All right. Now, the people who really need it, there's people who have $10,000. If you could wipe that out, they'd be on a good foot for a whole long time. It's not a college loan, but it's debt. So need versus want or desire are two different things. All right. People can rationalize and justify anything that they want.
Well, one last thing about the housing, I mean, and I heard this on a radio show last week, but even I know somebody that's in the same situation. You're getting housing subsidized through Section 8 housing vouchers, and you got other forms. Maybe you're getting disability or some form of Social Security or whatever, or some other forms of government assistance.
Man, Social Security is something that you paid into.
Yeah, you pay. So it's not, you pay into that. But if you are not able to work, or if you make too much money, then your housing for your rent goes up. So somebody I heard on a radio show was saying that he couldn't take a job because if he took the job, he would be making too much money to be eligible for the subsidized housing that he was receiving.
Right, that's a problem. That's a problem with the system. That's a system error.
But he's falling in. See, in some ways, he could be falling into the system too. Because
He is in this. He ain't no falling into the system. He's in it.
But making a mistake. Because if he figured out that he could be better off, and I guess housing could be very expensive. It could be a sticker shot to go from paying $500 a month to $1,500.
Yeah, that is sticker shot. Because $500 a month for rent it's just unheard of.
But if you're getting subsidized housing, that's kind of what I don't know.
Right, he contributes $500 toward the $1,800 or $1,500 a month rent.
Exactly. But if he now takes this job that was available for him, he said he couldn't take it because then his rent would go up.
Right, because he's making too much money.
Right.
For the subsidy. So now he has to pay the full rent.
But I wonder, in your situation, if you was in charge, what would you do? Would you keep the system operating the same way? That if you make too much...
If I was in charge of the world...
Well, just this area of government housing.
Government doesn't work that way. Unless you're the president, you don't get to make those kinds of decisions that alter these things. This is legislative. These are legislative things that need to happen. They need the legislation needs to change, and thus the policies need to change to make exceptions for people so that you would graduate the way the increases happen, so that the increases would be incremental. So monthly, your rent's going to go up $5 until it reaches the threshold.
Okay.
Because of the fact that you got a new job.
Right.
And then that gives you enough time to make an adjustment.
Right.
It shouldn't all of a sudden go up because that's going to impact their living situation, and now they become homeless. So you're undermining the opportunity for people to be successful. Nothing happens by accident. The people who plan this stuff are very well aware of this. It's totally arbitrary that you make a ruling like that. So if you make $5 over this amount, you get a raise. This happened to people. When the minimum mandatory raise went up in Connecticut and other places around the country, people were forced into a higher bracket, and many people's rent went up. I talked to people here in Hartford where that happened. And so now their rent has gone up, and they can't afford to stay in their apartment because they're making the new minimum wage, and that threw them off. So there should be something that says, look, you got to raise. Your rent is going to go up, but it's not going to go up all at once. This will give you time to make an adjustment.
Right.
That would be a reasonable workaround.
But see, it sounds like to me, the person on the radio show and the person that I know, they don't want to. They want to keep it where they're paying the amount of rent money that they're paying. They don't want to make more money, so they would have to pay more money for rent. They rather keep their wage, believe it or not.
The incentive is they're getting $1,000 toward their rent.
Right.
And so why would a reasonable person, if human beings take the path of least resistance.
Exactly.
All right. You can have all kind of community standards, this, that, and the third. But people make their own decisions, and it is better for that person to not take the job, so they can have a place to live. They can afford $500.
They can afford that, yeah.
And then they have extra money left over to do whatever else they want to do.
So that's not a problem then in our country, how we run that system.
It's a big problem.
It's a big problem, okay. But you don't blame the person that's
the system, John, it's complex. It's complex. That's how people act and respond. Now, whether that's in the long-term best interest of the individual or not is highly debatable.
Okay.
Because who am I to determine what his best interest is? It's ultimately, is that going to be in my long-term best interest how he behaves? So we like to control how other people behave because it impacts us. So it's not really what's in their best interest. No one can determine what's in someone else's best interest unless they're incapacitated in some way and have a mental deficiency to determine, like children. So if they're dependent on you, if they're your dependent, then you have a responsibility to take care of them. But if you automatically volunteer to be a dependent on the government, now the government takes care of you, and then the government abuses, uses, and exploits you. Because that's what ultimately happens. You can't move out of your community. You can't move out of your neighborhood. The streets start to decline. The schools get bad. There's nothing you could do about it. You could always move, but where are you gonna move to?
Exactly.
So there are reasons why things are the way they are, and why they're the way they are where they are. Because in affluent neighborhoods, people are not dependent on the government.
Right.
The government is dependent on them. They tell their elected officials what to do. They tell their schools what to do because they are running them. Those communities are self-sustaining because they make money. They're self-policing. They have their own police departments that look out for them. They take care of them, come to serve their aid and rescue and this, that, and the third. They don't treat them like they're occupiers. They treat them like they've been hired to protect and serve, right? And then they are educating themselves. So community, the basic three things for a community is to be self-sustaining, self-educating, and self-policing. We do not have that in our communities. Someone takes care of us by providing money. Someone takes care of us, it teaches us by providing all of the education that you're going to get. You teach your children what we tell you to teach them. And we're policed by someone outside the community. Told where to go, when to go, and how to go.
Well, that means you have to be a strong-minded individual to overcome some of the obstacles that's thrown at you, because it has been stated that somebody will say, well, everybody in my family is an unwed mother. Everybody in my family is a father that's been locked up in prison that has served time. Everybody in my family that I know that I grew up in has dropped out of high school. So now it has to come to you to say it's going to stop with me. I can't change what my father, grandfather, uncles, aunts did, cousins are doing, sisters are doing, but I'm not going to become another statistic. It's going to stop with me. I'm not going to prison. I'm not going to drop out of high school. And I can't change maybe the surroundings around me, but I'm at least going to focus on changing myself. So when you get into welfare and saying, it's a big problem, obviously it is a big problem. It's gives you this expectations that this is what you can aim for. The system, everything is covered, at one point. It's changed in some areas now. It's gotten stricter, but it's still available. It's still a huge dependency that people rely on it. And you can't really, with the way the cost of housing is, inflation is going up the roof. They already predicting that many people are not going to be able to pay their utility bills. So I don't have a problem for me if I own a house and I'm having trouble that I can't pay my heating costs or my fuel costs Well, if Operation Fuel is available, I will go. I will say, look, I just can't afford to pay.
That's abusing the system.
How is it abusing the system, though?
If you can afford to pay for your own heating and you go to Operation Fuel because it's there.
No, but I can't. I'm saying.
Well, if you can't, then you're going to need help. If they can't help you, you're not going to be able to get no heat. You're not going to stay somewhere.
But that's what I'm saying. As a person, then I would recommend turning to Operation Fuel. Because it's either
Jonathan, that reasonable people who don't know what to do will ask somebody for help.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, and unless they are dependent on somebody, these people got to do for themselves.
Well, you do for yourself the part is you're working, you're paying most of your bills that you can afford to pay. Through no fault of your own, fuel cost doubles.
Right, so you have to cut something out of your budget so that you can pay for heat or turn the heat down.
Yeah,
this is not rocket science. This is a matter of what life choices a person's going to make.
But what problem do you have with Operation Fuel, though?
I don't have any problems with Operation Fuel. None.
Okay, so there should be no problem for the person seeking.
I don't have a problem with the person that needs to go to Operation Fuel. I thought you were saying you don't have a problem paying your bills.
No.
You could pay all your bills, but Operation Fuel is there. So
no, that's not what I'm saying.
Right. So
I'm saying I am having a problem paying my bills, and the heating costs will be going up. So it's very difficult for me to go to $400 a month paying for gas utility or a gas bill to $800 a month. I don't make enough money to really cover that.
So you need to make some serious life changes. You're going to have to cut something out of your budget. You'll do that to the degree that you can, and there's still a deficit. So now you reach out for help.
Right.
From family, from friends, from Operation Fuel, from the church, from the city. Anyone that can help you, that human being will be reaching out to, because otherwise they're going to freeze to death.
Is that part of a community when you have to be going to these services, or should the community be built and develop a way that it's already?
No. If you have a good community, they look out for one another.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the community's responsibility to look out for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's your responsibility to look out for yourself.
Right.
So maybe somebody has to move. Maybe you double up. There are people on the planet that don't live in the United States, and they have the same problems.
Right, that's true.
Now there's a little war going on over in Europe with Russia and
Ukraine.
The Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
and the Ukrainian people apartment is bombed out. Now they still living over there, and winter's coming.
Right.
Now there are people who have some really serious problems.
Right.
Husband was mortared, killed when a bomb went off.
Right.
That's the one that they want to talk about. There's 10 conflicts, wars on this planet right now.
Mm-hmm.
The ones in Africa ain't getting no money.
No money, yeah. It's a big problem. That's why.
So, in America, I can't keep my electricity from my widescreen television, my coffee maker. I'm not trying to belittle, but let's put things in perspective.
Well, now, truthfully, Energy Source was having a tremendous rate increase a couple of years ago with the electrical bills throughout Connecticut. That was a serious problem. I don't know how it got to that point. I don't know if it's been changed dramatically, but there was a problem.
You mean Eversource?
Eversource, yes, was having a huge increase in your monthly electrical rates. So that's not sometimes. If I'm running my house the same way with the electricity that I always have been running, and my bill was $100, and all of a sudden the bill went to $300, that's not on me. That's on Energy Eversource.
It may not be on you, but the fact of the matter is you using a resource and you got to pay for it. My gas went up. My car gets like 13 miles to the gallon.
Right.
I'm not getting a new car. Either I gotta. It costs $125 a gallon. $125 to fill up my gas tank.
Right.
On both cars, just about.
Mm.
Now my older car gets great gas mileage. The oldest of the two cars gets great gas mileage. The other one, 13 city, 18 on the highway.
Mm.
It's a fuel hog.
It is.
All right. So either we have to drive less or we have to pay more.
Right.
That's for every single human being in the United States. They have to drive less or pay more.
Well,
and all the justification, all of the hand wringing, all of the I need that doesn't change anything. So what do?
Not necessary.
You drive less.
No, if a trucker, it's a business, but still, if a trucker has to drive,
right, and he gonna pass on those bills to you and me,
right?
Because he can't afford to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
He won't be able to. He won't be able to deliver the goods.
Well, that's where things are kind of at right now in the country.
Right.
So,
and
did President Joe Biden screwed up the country? When
it doesn't matter whether he screwed up the country or not. That's irrelevant. Those are political discussions for folk that are for or against the president.
Uh-huh.
Those will go on and when the next president comes, because there's two sides of the aisle and they don't get along.
Well, how did inflation it had to be a reason how inflation.
Yeah, right. But that's another subject for another day. The fact of the matter is prices have gone up and people have to make adjustments or they're going to have to seek out help. If they don't get help, then they're going to have to cut back some things.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't cut back, don't get help, then they're going to suffer in a dramatic way.
Well, I think most people do that. I think most people
I think so
adjust.
too.
So there's nothing to disagree with, really. Maybe the only point I was trying to address is the connecting facts of how welfare played a role into some of the issues that you have today, which
right.
I mean, I think that's still relevant.
Yeah.
You know, if you got a problem of more takers than givers, you said one area of the country is a community. It's self-sustaining.
There are thriving communities and there are communities that don't thrive. And
right.
The ones that don't thrive, there's a reason why, and the reason is what it is.
Well, the family member up in Boston blames it's the whole Democratic system. The Democrats run the cities. It was their policies that was initiated, and the people continue to vote for the same democratic structural policy, people, and then you're getting the same results. So I'm not in favor of the Republican policy because I don't see what they've really done. He may show me some examples. Well, a Republican state is run differently. There's more progress there. But I think even that's a little bit questionable if you really look into it. But when people continue to say, well, the crime is all mostly run by Democratic cities, you know, was run by Democratic
administrations.
Yes,
within the cities.
Administrations in the cities. I tell him the problem is beyond just that. I mean, that might be a big part of the problem, but it's not the only part of the problem. And he doesn't seem to really buy into that. He thinks, no, it's the Democrat. I said, well, look.
Well, you know, that would you know, some of what you're saying presupposes that the poor only live in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And the cities are not the only place where the poor live.
And they're not the only places that's run by Democrats. I think I want to get that message across, unless he got some data that can show that all of the problems of rural poverty, inner city poverty is run by Democrats.
But there's the high crime is not associated with rural poverty.
Okay.
He's talking about the crime.
Mm-hmm. And Democrats are the ones that runs all of these cities.
There's crime in rural America, but not like there is in the urban
areas. Okay.
Areas.
So maybe he's correct on the crime problem. Then maybe, I mean, unless I can find some data that can show evidence of something differently. But I just have a hard time, man, blaming the Democrats for my problem.
I have a hard time blaming anybody for anything because blame doesn't change anything. Well, you know, if you can identify the cause of a problem, that is helpful in helping you to come up with a remedy, particularly if the problem is persistent and continues to be present. All right. Once you fix that problem, then you can move forward. Sometimes you have an inquiry as to what went wrong so you can prevent it from happening again. But blame is very, very unuseful. There's nothing that comes from blame other than to say it's your fault and not mine. So, understanding the genesis of an issue or a problem, very helpful. If one is trying to resolve something. Most times that's not the case. Most times people just want to blame someone so they can neutralize them as opposition, so now that they can be in charge. That's usually what it comes down to.
So that to me it almost sounds like it doesn't really matter why your city is crime and run down. Let's say crime infested, run down. It doesn't really matter to blame someone. The problem exists. And the only thing I will say, though, is that if you are voting for a particular political group that has the power to keep things operating.
You shouldn't be voting for a political group. You should be voting for solutions to the problem.
Right. Instead of voting, just say, for a Democrat.
Right. A political group means nothing. And so what? They're Democrats or they're Republicans. What difference does that make?
But see, I think what I have had some experience, and I think what people will say is the Democrats tell you what you like to hear, where the Republicans won't say anything. They're just point blank. We're going to do, we got tax incentives. We got a lot of policies, but you don't see that those policies are relevant towards your life. But the Democrats now, we'll fund more money for this program, more nonprofits, you'll get this program, more money for social services.
Once again, people voting for their favorite team. Right, like Patriots versus the Buccaneers. The people are voting for their team, rooting for their team. The diehard fan.
But they're telling you things that makes you feel good. If you're
hearing, but Jonathan, if people get high so they can feel good, and
right, well
they go to church so they can feel
good. Yeah, but I'm just saying that's the perception that I get from the Democrats is that they tell you things that you want to hear.
How many years do you have to see something not working? 45, 50, 100? It doesn't matter to me that they're Republicans or Democrats. What matters to me is the capacity to resolve the problem. I don't care what party you're in.
All right.
It's not your government. Your party has the privilege, the honor of managing the government on behalf of the people. The constituents. It's our government, not theirs. They petition to manage the government. Now, if they can't do their job, then they're no different than the person working at Burger King who can't fry a hamburger.
Yes.
We can't use you. You got to go. But we don't look at it like that. We'd be better off if it was a basketball team. Because the minute they start losing, coach is out. But these guys can lose on a regular and they stay in there. That's a problem, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And so we get into this team fan type attitude. What are you going to fix? How are you going to fix it? What are the goals? How do we know if you're getting there? And but the Democrats and the political parties, they play towards your needs. If they play toward the need of the person and the person is good with that, then they'll get bamboozled.
They're good for that, and they're gonna continue voting because
and that name of the game in politics is votes.
Right.
You count the votes. The votes are what get you in. And if you can do a bouncy house and a couple of hot dogs, and that gets you a vote,
well, I mean,
then so be it. So the person got into office not because they were going to do anything, but because they connected to the voter, and the voter was happy with that individual, and now they're in. Now they're waiting around for the individual to do something. They didn't have a plan. They have to wait till they get word from the party bosses as to what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the party is not interested in you. They're interested in staying in power.
Well, Stan, let me ask you a question. I mean, I don't know, you don't have a problem answering any particular question, but it might make you feel a little uncomfortable.
Nothing makes me feel uncomfortable. If I'm uncomfortable answering the question, I'll tell you that's none of your business.
Why do you think you have lost the last 3 mayoral elections? Is it something on your fault that
because the party runs the city.
Okay.
So how are you going to win against the party?
So you're going up against the machine.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't win against the machine. Right.
So you know that's going into it, though.
Of course, Jonathan.
Right.
That doesn't mean you don't try.
Right.
Like I said before, sometimes you try because you're trying to make a point.
Okay.
You honestly can do what you believe is a better job. Mm-hmm. But if you don't try, then go home and sit down. Stop complaining. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to complain, then you have to offer up a solution. The solution isn't one that I have the power to implement, or I would. But I can't.
Right.
So I offer the solution up. Then it's up to the voters. The voters made a choice. Mm-hmm. I did that 3 times. 3 times the voters chose the party person. Mm-hmm. Now, Brandon McGee is part of the party.
All right.
But he fell out of favor because they didn't want him running. Mm-hmm. Eddie Perez has experience running the city.
Right.
He has experience working with minority contractors. He has experience building schools. He has experience in turning the school system around. But when he ran, he was running against the party.
Well, did his track record have anything to do with it, or his criminal charges? You don't think that played a role?
That may have had some role to do with it, but more than anything, he was opposed to the party. Mm-hmm. Right? In a city of second chances, you'd have thought he would get a second chance. Mm-hmm. But he's running against the party.
Right.
You can point to his we're not defined by our worst day. We're defined by our better days. Mm-hmm. And I would say his better far outweighed any of his worst.
Right. So the party and the machine system is a big factor on why.
Absolutely. That goes without saying.
Without saying.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're running against the party. Mm-hmm. The Democrats control Hartford. Mm-hmm. Period.
But you're a Democrat too, but you're still running up against the machine party though. So even you as a Democrat,
brother Thompson, you've been a member of this church for 30 years. Your problem is you're not part of the inner circle of the church. Okay. So you will not be becoming a deacon this week.
Right.
All right. So and because you're a member of the church, don't mean nothing.
Okay.
Sit your butt down in the third pew from the right and don't become an adjutant here, or we will find a way to force you out. Mm-hmm. That's the real world.
Okay. Well, things have definitely changed because there was a time, I mean, there might be some similarities or some differences, but you and Thurman Milner was able to become mayor in 81, but it was a completely different type of.
It was different, but he was in the party.
The party. But I think some of his issues of being concerned for the people, people looked at, because he was running against a very popular mayor, George Atherton.
And George lost.
He lost. But do you see any similarities of yourself to Thurman? Do you think you have any similarities to Thurman Milner? Or y'all
not other than we know each other.
Okay. Okay. So you're believing for the people, putting Hartford residents first. I think Thurman feels that way. You don't think that's some similarities that you have with Thurman? At least that's what he advocates. That he says that we should.
I would not put myself in a category where I would compare. I don't feel that I am in a position to make any comparisons to Thurman Milner. Thurman Milner was he was involved as a state representative, I believe, and also a state senator.
State senator, exactly.
And he was a former mayor. Mm-hmm. And the city did pretty good during that time, but it was a weak mayor form of government.
Right.
And he had a tremendous hurdle to overcome because of the systemic racism that was present when he became mayor.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I'm not a Thurman Milner. I wouldn't compare myself to Thurman Milner.
Thurman Milner, okay.
He is in a league of his own.
It just comes across that you kind of put the residents first. That
May be. It's not for me to make that comparison. Others that know Thurman and know me can make that comparison, but I don't. I don't.
Well, like you just stated, y'all have differences in political experiences. He was a state senator, state rep, like you mentioned,
and a mayor,
too. He had to get elected mayor, but
right. That's a tremendous feat to be elected into office.
Mm-hmm. And had you come along and ran before Hartford went to the strong mayor form, you think you would have been able to get elected?
I can't speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
The history would say no.
Okay.
Because I've not yet been elected to anything.
Right. So, well, again, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I know we have the governor's race in Connecticut before the mayoral race in Hartford. And again, I don't know where things stand at. This whole thing with getting Bob Stefanowski as a guest, honestly, is going nowhere. But that's really reality. And I think his campaign,
about 70 days left.
Yeah, but I think his campaign, from what I'm hearing, is having some issues. I think Governor Ned Lamont looks like he's in the driver's seat.
There's 70 days is an eternity in politics. It is far too early.
I wouldn't want to be having problems in my political staff. I would, at this point, I would want, if I was running for governor, my whole staff to be in order. I wouldn't want to be making changes of campaign managers and
changes in campaign managers can be a plus depending upon who's coming in and who's going out.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's true.
Send a powerful message.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too early. Way too early to be. It's way too early.
Oh,
this is like. I mean, unless you can count.
Mm-hmm.
If you can count the votes,
mm-hmm.
then you can know the outcome. Because this is a numbers game.
Right.
Straight out. But they can't count. So, it's like a boxing match. The rumble in the jungle. And folk can talk all they want. Until the bell rings.
Right.
And the fight starts. That's when we see. Then, at the end of this contest, someone's going to emerge out of that ring a winner. We are way too far away to determine. There hasn't even been a debate yet.
Yeah, but I think you already know, political analysts and people who know
political analysts have been so wrong that they're almost as reliable as CNN.
Well, I'm talking.
Remember, they analyzed that Donald Trump would never become president of the United States, even on the night of the election.
Yeah.
So I have zero faith in prognostication abilities of political analysts.
Well, not so much even just the political analyst polls. I'm just talking about the cities are almost a far gone fetch that Governor Lamont is going to win the cities. I think anybody. So the strategy for Stefanowski is to cut into the numbers. He can't win the urban cities.
And you know this because you had a conversation with him, or is you just thinking?
I think I noticed, or looking at the past governors' elections, how they have gone.
Then you don't think that he or Ned will make changes? Ned lost. Remember when Ned Lamont lost?
He lost in 2006, yes.
Right, and then he won.
And actually in 2006, that was what, Jody Rell was the governor?
I don't remember.
I think she had to be. It wasn't Rowland.
But he ran and he lost. Then he won. So, I mean,
But that's not the point. The point is, where have the cities contributed towards who has been elected for governor? He lost. There was other I think Dan Malloy won in 2010. I don't know if he ran in 2006. So let's just say, for instance, the cities have always been voting for Democrats, and you went in heavy
Democrat stronghold.
So the strategy as a Republican, I know I can't win the cities. I just got to get some of the numbers down from the governor winning. Like if the governor gets, let's just say, 10,000 guaranteed votes from the city, I got to get that number down probably to maybe 7,000. I can't win the cities, but if I get the numbers down as a Republican candidate, and I get the numbers up in some other areas throughout Connecticut, then that's my best strategy of beating Governor Lamont.
That's your best strategy. That's Jonathan's best strategy.
Right, that's true.
Right.
But if he lost by 40, they say the reports indicated that Bob Stefanowski lost the last election in 2018 by 40,000 votes throughout Connecticut. So people got to analyze, where did he lose the state at? Where did the numbers?
People don't have to analyze unless that's something they want to do. They ain't that deep. There have been Republican governors here for a long time.
Rolling.
Right.
Governor Rolling.
Connecticut likes to have two parties running the state. One party in the legislature, one party in the
governorship,
in the executive branch. All right, in the governor's office. So, there are a lot of different ways that this could play out. Folk don't know. They don't know. They can prognosticate, they can analyze, they can talk. All this stuff's going to make money for people in the news and this, that, and the third. At the end of the day, the constituency will come out and vote.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is vote for the people who have a plan to move forward things you think are in the best interest of you as a constituent, irrespective of party.
Right.
And I remain consistent with that since I ran.
Well, you don't even buy into this whole too far to the left, too far to the right movement of how people always talk about. The Democrats are too far to the left. The Republicans are too far to the right.
Right. That's you don't think no. It works because it's very, in my mind, it's a very childish argument. Most people are not on the extreme left and the extreme right.
Right.
They're in the middle. And no one deals with the middle. And the middle is getting pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these clowns play left, right. The middle is getting pissed off.
Yes.
The problem is that there's no real middle candidate.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So what's going to wind up happening is folk going to stay home. Because everyone doesn't believe they have an obligation to go vote.
Right.
They just as soon stay home. Wash their hands of it. As you mentioned in the program, folk are paying double for gas, double for food, and they blame the government.
Right.
They're giving away $10,000 to people who can afford to pay back their loans. They give you child credit money. They giving some businesses money. They didn't ask for it, but they figure it's a good thing. But if you get kids, you got to apply for that, even though they know how much money you make, because it's the tax money. I mean, they play all these games with people, and folk are getting tired of it and pissed off. And when they vote, that's when you will know what people think after the election. Before then, it's a lot of talk, a lot of pre-fight talking, a lot of wolf tickets going on. But they haven't even had a debate.
Yeah, Bob Stefanowski had mentioned on a radio show that one of the debates was delayed by Governor Lamont. That I guess October is when they're going to have the first debate. I don't know if they're going to have 2 or 3, but October is looking at the time span.
That works, that works for the better and the good. You have brighter minds than mine making these decisions. You put off the debate until the end and pray that you do good. Now, if you have debates in the beginning, if you do a little stumble, you can do a comeback. You know, so in my never to be humble opinion, you should have at least 3 debates, because that's when we can really tell. But they're not trying to have a debate to inform the constituents. They're trying to have debates around staying in power or getting in power.
Right.
When the constituent is first, then they do things that's going to be best for the voter, best for the constituent. The constituents are the ones voting. The constituents are the ones who own the government. The constituents should be the ones that they're trying their best to win over with the policies and that they have and that they are proposing to put forward and to answer the serious questions. They don't want to do that because they don't really want to be put on. They don't want to be put up against a wall and have to really answer tough questions. Now, the candidate that does that got my vote.
You know, I'll tell you one little personal thing. I mean, I did hear back from Bob Stefanowski, but the one thing he did made it perfectly clear is that I'm not promising you, I'm not saying I'm going to be on the show, but someone will be reaching out to you. So I'm under the assumption if this person really wants to come on the show, he will come on the show.
That's true, but Jonathan, we also have to be realistic in terms of who we reach, how broad our audience is, and the value of political time. You have to be very, very selective as to where you spend your time and where you don't.
I understand that part, Stan.
If he's here, he can't be somewhere else. And that's for both candidates.
Well, the only thing is, I'm not. And I had even sent him a message this morning, and his staff person. I'm not. I need an answer. I mean, you don't. It doesn't take this long.
It does take this long.
No.
You want an answer.
I've been booking guests for a while, Stan, and I know the time span that I get an answer from, and it doesn't take.
It takes this long for a political candidate to give you an answer.
Okay.
That's running a statewide campaign where every word you say is going to be micromanaged.
Okay.
He is a white male. Governor Lamont is a white male coming onto a black platform.
Right.
And every single word they say is going to be watched by the major press, by the parties, and everything else. And the potential to say the wrong thing is very high. That's just the reality.
So it's a real big decision. And
it's an extremely big decision. Because if you say the wrong thing, it winds up being like the president on the morning talk with my man. The God. I can't think of his first name. That he goes by.
The Breakfast Club?
Yeah, the Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, yeah.
Where he said, you know, if you're black, you're going to vote for me.
Right.
Next thing you know, is a major soundbite all over the world.
I'm glad that we're talking about this because now that kind of gives me a little bit better.
I wouldn't take it personally.
No, I'm not taking it. I'm taking it professionally, but I'm not taking
it professionally, it doesn't matter. He's just another guest.
Right. He is.
He's just another guest.
Right.
He just happens to be running for office.
Yeah.
And because he's running for office, that changes things. He doesn't know what kind of questions you're going to ask.
Right.
He or a member of his staff, he's never been on before.
He's never been on.
Right. Either he or a member of his staff has watched the program. I'm sure that they've watched more than the morning show with you.
Right.
They probably watched the morning show with Luis, who has an open hostility toward white people.
Right.
Do you want to come on a platform like that?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad now.
So I'm just keeping it 100.
Yeah.
All right. Now, so these are decisions. The answer to the question could be yes. The answer to the question could be no. You just need to be prepared. And you have to have what you got, what questions are likely to come. Where are you on these questions? How comfortable will you be when you answer the questions? Those things don't happen in a vacuum. That's not how communications work. Most certainly not before what could be a potential, whether real or perceived, the idea or the notion that it could go south in terms of the interviewer becoming hostile is always real. And so you have to be ready for it.
And that's really saying me now, or me and
You.
you. Yeah, you. Exactly. I understand.
You or me.
And
He doesn't know me or you.
Right.
You could go flip on him in a heartbeat. He does not know. He doesn't know that, Jonathan. Now, we don't have a history of ambushing people.
No.
But you never know.
And
You never know. As the person coming here, if I was a candidate, you know.
Well, truthfully, I've had Tom Foley, who ran twice for governor. I've had David Walker, who ran for governor. So they must have had something. I mean, it might have been a little different.
I can't speak to Tom Foley. David Walker is a guy that doesn't cut. He doesn't hold his words back. He says what he means. He means what he says, and he's unapologetic for it. He's extremely knowledgeable and can handle most situations. He's worked for a myriad of administrations. He understands finance. He's an extremely, extremely sharp human being. So hit me with your best shot.
All right.
Doesn't matter if you don't like me. It doesn't matter. I mean, he's comfortable in his own skin, and that it's instant and it exudes. Communicating is not easy for people. Some people do better than others.
Right.
And if you're not that comfortable communicating, these are hurdles you have to overcome, and it takes time. And I'm not saying that that's the case with Bob Stefanowski or Ned Lamont. However, those are things that you have to consider when they do or don't come on.
Right. Right.
There's reasons why people will have debates and won't have debates. If you have an open conversation or debate with your opponent could win. And if you're the incumbent, that's bad. That's real bad if they score on you.
Well,
so this is very, very serious decisions in the campaign and with the candidate.
Right. Right. Well, I'm glad everything has been clarified a little bit. You know, it's a big decision, and when you have a big decision, you do got to be careful and take your time. You know, if somebody's going to ask me, not the exact same example, but I'm just saying this as one way, that I need to borrow $25,000. I need an answer right away. I got to think about this. You know, now some people it's easy to say yes or no, but you know, if he says no, then
it's a no.
Yeah, it's a no, but
it's not a no. It ain't. The decision has been made yet.
But the decision on his part might be something to think about. Is there a benefit for me coming on accesstv.org network?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I gotta think about it. I gotta be careful. I gotta know when I really want to do this. Some people, they want media attention instantly. They want to get on the camera. So this is not quite, because like you say, this platform may not be the best platform for him to market his campaign. Obviously, I do understand that part.
No, I'm saying that this platform gives opportunity for a positive result or a negative result. Being on the morning show with not Dan Lavallo, but Gary Byron, is more likely to be positive.
Right. That's true.
With almost no negatives. If he's on the morning show with Gary, the most negative he's going to get was he wasn't hard enough.
Exactly.
He needs to have a little bit more punch. If Ned Lamont is on the morning show with Gary, the potential to be negative is extremely high.
Extremely high.
Because most of the audience doesn't like him.
Right. That's true. That's true. It's a conservative. Plus, it's a conservative. From what I understand, it's a conservative.
If he goes on WTIC with Todd, it's off the chart negative
for Governor Lamont.
Right.
Right. But Bob Stefanowski,
Bob, 50-50.
50-50.
Gary, 90-10.
Right.
Here, the racial component is real.
It's real.
Right.
And people could actually call in too. I think the format is set up if you want to call in. So
But we probably won't take calls.
we probably wouldn't take calls.
Right. So the potential is real, and it's broadcast, and it can be seen by people anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very, it could be, so you have to, it's, it would be like if I was running for mayor, and I was asked to come on a national broadcast for the LGBTQ plus community.
All right.
To talk about my views on homosexuality and transgenderism.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to go on that show?
Yes.
Now, how's it going to look if you avoid that?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been around a long time, and so we've heard some things you've said, and so we want to see where you're at.
Mm-hmm. But I think people would know, if people know enough about you, they would know how you your stance on.
So if when I go on the show, everyone's going to be watching.
Watching, right?
They may not all, maybe nobody watch, but all I do is if I say the wrong thing, the wrong way, we got a very upset LGBTQ plus community, and we got a very upset Christian community. And we got upset communities in between. I can't believe you would even go on a program like that. You call yourself a man of God. So you have to think about those things.
Right.
Or are you capitulating to black folk now? I mean, all these things are real. Folk want to act like they aren't, but they are very, very real. So you have to weigh these things out. Mm-hmm. Not saying no. Do we put some parameters down? Do we, what are we going to be talking about?
Right.
How do you communicate that? Is there an understanding from the jump that we have some issues where we disagree? Those issues that we disagree on aren't going to supersede the overall issues. Mm-hmm. So these are real.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. He's not going to screen me out. Now, I will have no problem explaining to him what we are going to be talking about. But if he comes back and saying, "Well, I don't want to talk about certain issues,"
then you won't be on.
No, I won't be on. So
right. So it's a nut sum game. He loses nothing by you not having it.
Yeah. I remember one time. This was even before you decided to run for mayor of Hartford. I was trying to get Eddie Perez on, and I remember him telling me I guess he had some legal issues that he was still going through. He said he had more to lose than he had to gain, and it just. People said if he gets on he just felt like if he got on a media format and he says the wrong thing,
yeah,
he has a lot to lose.
Absolutely.
So I remember him telling me that exact same thing.
Right.
So you do got to be careful.
It's not personal, but if I come on, I'm gonna lose. This is just no. No, not at this time. I just can't do that.
Can't do that.
That's understandable. Mm-hmm. You have to understand that as
right. Well, I mean,
the person making the request for him to come on. That's all I'm trying.
Yeah, but I think I've done it very fairly. I told him or his staff.
You extended the opportunity.
Right.
That's all you can do.
Right.
That's it. Now the rest is up to him.
But I can't hold my breath and just hang on. At some point.
You have a tendency to focus on a thing, Jonathan. Like a bulldog biting onto the bone, won't let it go. If he comes, he comes. If he doesn't, he doesn't. It's not the end of the world.
No, it's not. But I felt it would be good for the network to have both candidates on before the election. It's not the end of the world. I do understand that. Somewhat of a slight missed opportunity, but that's how I feel. You may not feel that way. The viewers may not feel that way. But I think it would be a good opportunity to get both candidates on before the election. Obviously, after the election would be another better benefit too. We can be a black network. I know you make it no bones about it that this is a black network. Regardless if I book white people consistently as I book black people, you still see it as a black network.
As long as the hosts are black, it'll be seen as black.
Okay.
It ain't who you bring in here. It's who's on.
But I remember one.
The guests don't make a platform their ethnicity. So if you had Asian people here, or indigenous people here, or Australian people here, or people from Japan here, or people from Uganda here, that would not make this a Ugandan program. It doesn't make it anything. They're just human beings from a particular place.
Yeah, but
that's all. Yeah. Now, you and I are black. Mm-hmm. When people see it, they see the hosts are black.
Right.
So our perspective comes from that. And that's what makes it a black.
But me and you can have a white person, which we've had white and Asian. Well, yeah, we've had Asian people a few times. I can have someone from a different race on and talk about issues relative towards what they are about. You know, if I had someone and I was doing a show, well, the drug policy is kind of all people are involved in that.
It almost doesn't matter what you're talking about, Jonathan. Mm-hmm. What you're not grabbing a hold of is that it is not the questions you ask. Mm-hmm. It's you. You are a black male.
You've always stated that exactly up front from the.
You're a black male.
Right.
You look like a black male.
I'm a black male.
Right. So and I'm a black man.
Right. So it's a black show, no matter
right.
how.
Now, we don't have to agree. We may have all kinds of perspectives. Mm-hmm. You know. You might be a brother's brother.
Yeah. Well, it's no.
You might be a down by the way. You know, Tom, Martha's a Martha's Vineyard black folk.
Yeah.
Uncle Tom, but you're still black.
Right. Well, I think you can see, and other people can see.
Right, you might be the president of the United States.
Yeah,
but you're still black, and so it is by default that your perspective must be from someone who is black, and that's normal.
Yeah, but like you just mentioned, people who watch this program, they know how Luis Delgado feels of some of the statements he's made, and
that's how Lou feels.
Yeah, but isn't that a reflection of the network? If
no, that's a reflection of Lou.
Of Lou, okay, so it has no reflection if he comes on. I mean, you don't have to be careful if he says that, I hate white people. You don't think that kind of reflects? Not saying that you feel that same way. And I'm not saying he made that statement.
I am a free speech advocate. I've spent my entire adult life advocating for free speech. If there's a litmus test with me, it's free speech. That's my line in the sand.
Right.
Not abortion, not this, that, and the third. Free speech. I am a free speech advocate. I provide a platform so people can speak their mind. If he wanted to get on the air and say that, that's a reflection of him, not me. I had someone call up here threatening to shut us down and take us to court, this, that, and the third, when Marcus Jarvis called Al Sharpton a pimp. Mm-hmm. I said, well, you need to Google me.
Right.
And he's been on our program maybe 3 times since he called and threatened me. Mm-hmm. I told him, that's what I do. I give people voice.
You do, and I understand.
So I don't have a problem. Now, others might have a problem, but as we have said from day one, we're not here for the numbers. Mm-hmm. It's not how many watch. It's who watches. It's who. If there's one person watching, it's the right person. Mm-hmm. So if it's 1,000 people, so be it. I'm not moved by the numbers.
Right.
Some people watch numbers. Is my numbers going up? I don't look at old shows. Once the show is over, it's over. I don't look at them. I don't see how many people watch the show. Mm-hmm. I don't go back in time and see if more people are watching now. None of that matters to me.
Right.
Doesn't matter. What matters to me is giving people the opportunity to speak freely and unencumbered and to be heard. And I have 40 years of that. Now, if someone don't want to watch because that's how they think,
Well, and that's why I asked you a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if I asked you, do you feel the same way as Luis Delgado? But if somebody watches,
Now I clearly
I know that
disagree with Louis.
But I'm saying for someone that watches let's say someone watches the program for the first time. You don't know who's watching or when they're going to be watching.
Right, and it's him and me and Dr. Bowen. And if they watch for the first time and can't delineate between the three of us, then they got a problem.
They got a problem. Okay.
Now, I'm not worried about anything they think.
Okay.
That sounds arrogant, but that's who I am.
Right. Right.
Really? Louis,
he's different than you. I mean, people should know that
we agree on some things, but on the issues that he brings up here, there's a marked disagreement. Mm-hmm. We respect each other's point of view, mm-hmm. but I respect anybody's point of view.
Right.
And
like I said, don't get me wrong. I think Louis, I have never met him before, but I think he's a real serious-minded person.
Extremely.
And he brings a lot to the table.
Absolutely.
Whether I agree with, I guess nobody's going to agree with everything, but some of the, and like I said, I called the program a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to be perfectly clear. He mm-hmm. said Mayor Luke Bronin is a racist.
That's what he believes.
And again, I don't know if I asked him, man, is he no, I didn't ask him, was he a racist, though? I didn't get a chance to ask him that. I think I asked him some things about how he sees white people, but I don't think I directly asked him.
Right. I mean, to the degree that you need to, to me, it's pretty clear how he sees it. I mean,
right.
It is what it is.
Uh-huh.
I'm not worried about that.
Right.
I'm not worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
I
said this before. There is some similarities, I think, of Luis with the late Dr. Osagai. I haven't seen Luis go off the chain as far gone as Dr. Osagai, because he's been cut off programs on the air that he started saying some things and they had to cut the mic. So I haven't really seen any signs like that. But again, I get the feeling that if he, and I don't think you're going to allow him to name call people like Dr. Osagai used to do.
I don't disallow anything
mm-hmm.
that goes against my free speech ethic.
Right. Okay.
There are areas where one should be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I give people an opportunity. If you had a guest on here from the Klan, I would.
A Klan, right.
I'd love to bring a Klansman and find out why he thinks the way he thinks. These things don't bother me.
Right.
They bother certain people. One of the strengths and the assets that Luis brings in the mutually beneficial rule that we have here mm-hmm. is that he vehemently disagrees with me.
Disagree, yeah. Well, I think
I think that's an asset and a strength that he is here.
It is.
And vehemently disagrees with me.
It is. Don't get me wrong.
Because you don't have to agree with me to be here.
Well, no, the thing is, Luis brings a lot of interest to me to the show.
I believe so.
Because it's not like I'm still learning some things about him.
Right. And you talking about him uses up your real estate with him.
Yeah. Okay. That's true.
So he must be doing, he causes you to think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has you thinking proactively in some issues and some things. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know if I like I told him, I don't see to call a person a racist. You told me it doesn't mean that a person doesn't like a person because of their race, which I thought that's what.
Sometimes it means that. It can mean different things. Context is everything.
Uh-huh.
And certain words have different connotations. So you have to be careful what words you use because words mean things. But he That's what he believes, and he put it in context to explain to you exactly what he meant.
That's what he said on the air. He said that when the mayor is doing things that's keeping black and brown people from achieving, don't hold me word for word. He didn't state that it had anything that the mayor.
He considers that racist.
Racist, yes.
Right.
That you're doing things. You have policy. I think I brought up policies too, but
right. Well, it's a system that keeps people subjugated, and it's baked into every element of the system. There's a certain element of.
But is that really true? Is the people that's like saying the people in Hartford is that far gone? That the mayor would have that kind of power that he can.
Now, what have you heard me say about Hartford?
You said in the past that it's run like a plantation. Okay, so
I am being heard. Now, calling a place a plantation, I think I've been told by Democratic operative type folks, they don't like me saying that. That it was unfair. And Hartford is not a plantation.
I think it's how when you say plantation, if the city is run like a plantation, that's one thing. If the people are acting like they're slaves on the plantation, that's another thing. I don't know if you can separate the two.
They're one and the same. Hartford is a plantation. The crop grown here are people. Mm-hmm. And people here have become the new cotton.
Okay.
Rather than to leave the plantation, they'll do what they have to do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
There's two ways to deal with a plantation. You survive, or you leave. And some folk like plantation life.
Right. Well, I'm taking the impression that people are falling victims to slavery when you say a plantation, that
plantations aren't only, there's plantations all over the world, and the plantation didn't exist when captives came. The plantation didn't start existing as a result of captives here. A plantation, pineapple plantation is just that. It's a plantation. It doesn't mean it's run by slaves.
But see, that's again, even if it's not run by slaves, that's what the family member up in Boston says is part of the problem, that you can't allow yourself to fall into a victim, that you can't become
He's right.
a victimization of your circumstance. You can't have this belief, even though you might have obstacles, but if the obstacles is up in your brain that I'm a victim.
If as a man thinketh, so is he. Mm-hmm. If you process to where you're a victim, then that's what you will become, a victim. Everywhere you look, you'll see opportunities to show that you're a victim. You can't get this, you can't get that. Why? Because I've been victimized. I've been this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm suffering from this, I'm suffering from that. So you don't even try. You don't even try. The other person says, you know what, I'm going to the worst school in the city, but that doesn't matter. I'm not like everyone else.
Right.
I studied. Next thing you know, the person's going to one of the most elite colleges in the country, graduating from the worst school.
Right.
There are people who decide all at once, this is no longer the trajectory I'm going to be on. I don't think like that no more. I'm going to do this. And they accomplish it. People come here through the most horrific of circumstances, get in the country illegally, and prosper. And have to live a life hiding in the shadows and still prosper. I only use that as an example of if someone wants to accomplish a thing, they can. Some die trying to get in here. Now, for folk that are here, they can use whatever excuse they want. There are opportunities here. So there are abundant opportunities.
All right. So then that means you can be on the plantation, but you could still strive and better yourself. Just because the plantation mentality that you're trying to outline is that we're the crop. The people that's in the city, black and brown people mostly, are the crop.
Yeah, because you're in a program that needs to be managed. So if I'm in a program and I got to go down to the office to sign up for something.
Right.
Well, who's in the office?
What race of people, or who people, how they
Whether
run
they're the
office?
race, there's someone in the office,
The office.
who's managing me,
Right.
processing me, who reports to someone who's part of that management system, all the way down the line to some government official. Signing checks, writing requisitions, this, that, and the third, managing, making sure that the money gets here, that the money's spent right. Then they send an inspector over to your house to make sure that everything is in place. And everyone is eating off of you.
Yeah.
If we got rid of poverty in Hartford tomorrow, all those people would be out of work. They wouldn't be needed.
Right.
They'd suddenly be unemployed.
So
rather than to harvest cotton every year, you manage the poverty, and that can become a multi-billion-dollar industry because it's supported by the taxpayers' dollars and government.
Right.
And government officials dole out all this money, and then the side benefit is that you can guarantee these people will vote a certain way.
Well, that's what I was even saying earlier about certain policies that the Democrats have in their agenda. If they're telling, it's not even about telling you what you want to hear. It's about
I don't process it as Democrat.
Well,
I process it as who's running the plantation.
Well, but in this case, I think in Hartford, it's Democrats that's running the plantation.
Right, they just happen to be the party in power. There's plenty of little towns that are run by Republicans that have done the exact same way. They do. It's just that the people there aren't black.
Okay.
This is about power, not race. Power.
Right.
Power.
Well, it's a big issue. I mean, that's the only thing I can really say. It's a real big issue, because at some point you gotta ask yourself, am I really getting more advantages or disadvantages? Now, again, as I stated earlier, for the person that likes to pay $500 a month and he has to be at this income level, and he obviously is under some control. You know, it's not. Everything is not under his authority, what he can do, because again, if he makes a certain amount of money, then he's not eligible. So he
can't even go get a better job. That's how much under control he is.
Control, yes. And
he'll forego a better job just so he can stay in that little apartment.
That's what two people. That's what the person on the radio show and somebody else that I know has said, that they just can't make that amount.
Oh, I can't do that. If I do that, I won't be able to stay in my apartment.
Well, I mean, you know, everybody is their own person. I mean, people expectations, if you feel comfortable, like you stated, on the plantation being controlled, you don't see an issue with it. I mean, you would think a better opportunity. And that's why I think it's still, like you mentioned, it still needs to be a transitionary period, you know, transition process. You know, yes, you have to go up on the rent, but give like you say, give the person some time before he can.
Yeah, if you're trying to help them, if you're really thinking about the person, you try to ease them off of their dependency on anything. And so you would have systems in place that tended to work for them. All right. So more of a medical approach or a health issue approach. We don't want this patient in here forever. We want him to get well and leave. The ambulance picks you up, just drives you around for the rest of your life, keeping you on life support, making money off of you by the mile. They take you to the hospital, you get better, and then you discharge, you go about living the rest of your life. These people here, they get you. Once they got you, they gonna hold you in, keep you there. All right, because everyone's making money off of you. Everybody. Everyone. The landlord's got a locked-in guaranteed thing coming. He don't even have to take care of the place. The money's gonna be coming in. He's getting the same rent as someone downtown. So how come the place doesn't look like it, like the places downtown? Oh, they're being subsidized. It doesn't matter. You're paying $1,800 a month rent. You should have an $1,800 a month facility.
Right.
Just because the government is paying some of it doesn't mean that that your living conditions should be substandard. But you could take that you could be substandard because the money you earn, you don't have to put back into the facility. And since the people need to live somewhere, all this corruption. It's a horrific system.
Right.
But it needs people to survive. Like the prison industrial complex. You need prisoners to survive. Without prisoners, there's no profit.
Right.
So prisoners equal profit. The poor equal profit. And they make money off of the poor. They don't try to help the poor out of poverty. They manage their poverty. And poverty management is big business.
Yes, it is.
So we have these agencies that are supposed to be trying to alleviate and get rid of poverty. What they wind up doing is managing poverty. So if you're a former government official, you wind up working in one of these little agencies somewhere around the state that's supposed to be helping people out of poverty. You manage poverty. You make sure you give them the food they need. You make sure you give them the housing they need. And they are stuck there. They're stuck there.
But that wouldn't be the same as what do we call it? Income basic. I keep forgetting the name. Income basic or basic income.
Basic minimum.
No,
basic.
It's not minimum. Basic income something. It's those three words. Basic income. It's something that we did a show on that I brought up a few times in the past. Income basic. But that's what some people are advocating. And there's been some experiences. I think even Hartford had a $500 a month program.
Universal basic
income. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bowen.
Oh, she said, okay,
yeah. Universal basic income.
Okay. But that's not the same as welfare, though, is it? Is that kind of this?
Well, it's not the same. It's everyone would have a basic income, which would be a floor, which would be sustainable. Something has to be done. If in a society there aren't enough jobs for people and everyone still needs to live, you can't kill people.
Right.
People still need to have a means by which they can live. And so, as the society evolves, how people receive their sustenance will evolve as well. I mean, if you go to things like Star Trek, in the Star Trek universe, there isn't any money.
Right.
Everyone's basic needs are met.
But don't the country of England has more of that social service? I mean, I know what
I can't really speak on that.
I think the healthcare system is clearly like that, even though people think the United
right, but if you look at healthcare, people with more money get better health. We have good health in this country.
We have a great
most people can walk into a hospital and receive aid.
Mm-hmm. So the healthcare system is tremendous. It's just that, I guess if you really need health,
you can get it.
Yeah, get it. I mean, somebody's paying for it. Like saying, there's no free lunch.
Someone's gonna pay for everything. Everything has a cost.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in the Star Trek universe, everybody contributes to doing what it is that they do, and there is no fighting for resources and control of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there are different philosophical approaches, different monetary approaches, this, that, and the third that people have and come up with. I guess all of this is great for discussion, but at the end of the day.
But there's some things about universal basic income that you don't agree with. You think it's needed or it could be needed in the future, but there's some things about it that you don't.
I don't know enough about it to disagree or to agree. I think it's something that's really a neat thing to discuss. I could see where there could be where it could be useful.
Mm-hmm.
I could see where it could be not useful. I think it's worth having a conversation with some experts that actually know the details.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against it because I don't know enough about it.
Right. Well, one thing about you, what you are against, you make it perfectly clear. You are against any form of legalization of drugs. You don't. that I know. You're not in favor of legalizing marijuana in Connecticut. So what you are against, you definitely make it clear.
I think it should be decriminalized. I don't think it should be.
You've always stated that too.
Yeah.
Decriminalized. Well, again, man, it was an interesting show talking. Maybe we could do this every now and then, particularly when we don't have a guest. You know, I had no problem talking like this. I had an interest in interviewing the guest this morning.
Well, this is our normal conversation when we get off the air. That's why I just have it on the air.
Couple hours, yeah, because I'll be talking.
Because I get off the air and Jonathan be here. I'll be here until 11 o'clock, whether Jonathan's on the air or off there. So I said, we may as well just put it on the air.
Put it on the air. That's
and
true.
Just have our conversation.
Get out the way.
Right. Now it's 11. He can go home.
All right. Well, that's true. Get everything out in the open.
Right.
Everything I wanted to say said now, so I don't have to talk you to death after the show.
Right. It's always an after party. The talkers of the world always have an after party. There's the after the conversation, which is always the more interesting conversation.
Well, what I like this morning is I was able to bring up some things on the show that I probably was going to ask you off of the show. So sometime I like to do this. And I thought we were able to cover a lot of different areas of topics.
Yeah, Jonathan figures I'm going to hook him up, get him on the record.
Yeah, I guess you can say that and everything. But, yeah, let's see. I mean, I guess we're going to take the holiday off next week.
Yeah.
But let's look forward to September. I guess the next time I'll be seeing you will be the month of September.
All right, my friends, we're out of time. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.